Most people would never say it out loud, but underneath the surface of a lot of lives, there is a quiet, persistent feeling that they are somehow not quite enough. Not enough for the relationship, not enough for the opportunity, not enough for the version of life they can see other people living but cannot seem to reach themselves. Smart enough, but not that smart. Talented enough, but not quite at the level that seems to matter. Trying hard enough, but still falling short of some standard that keeps moving just out of reach. It is one of the most common feelings in the human experience, and one of the least talked about. Because admitting it feels like confirming it. Our Father has something very specific to say about this. Psalm 139:14. David writes, "I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well." Psalm 139:14, ESV. Fearfully and wonderfully made. That is not casual language. That is not a general encouragement designed to make people feel better about themselves. Those are two very specific, very deliberate words that say something profound about the intentionality behind your existence. Fearfully, in the original sense, means with reverence, with awe, with the kind of careful, attentive intention that a craftsman brings to the work he considers most important. Your Father did not make you carelessly. He did not put you together hastily and move on to the next thing. He made you with reverence for what he was creating, and wonderfully set apart, distinct, uniquely and specifically formed. Not off a template, not a copy of something else. You, specifically. The way you think, the way you feel, the things that move you, the particular combination of gifts and experiences and perspective that exists nowhere else in all of creation. That is not an accident. That is not random. That was made, deliberately, by a Father who knew exactly what he was doing. Now understand where David was when he wrote this. The full context of Psalm 139 is one of the most intimate portraits of our Father's knowledge of a human being in all of Scripture. David is describing a Father who knows when he sits and when he rises, who is familiar with every path he walks, who knew him before he was born, who saw him being formed in the womb, who had already written every day of his life before a single one of them came to be. This is not a Father who is generally aware that David exists. This is a Father who knows David completely. Every thought before it is spoken, every fear before it surfaces, every strength and every weakness, every version of David across every chapter of his life, and knowing all of that. Our Father still calls the work wonderful, still looks at David, complicated, flawed, deeply human David, and says the work is wonderful. The works of our Father are wonderful. And you are one of those works. That is not a verse about having everything together. David did not have everything together. He was deeply imperfect in ways that Scripture does not try to hide. And still, the declaration stands. Fearfully and wonderfully made, not in spite of the complexity, including it. Think about what it would actually shift in your daily life if you genuinely believe this about yourself. Not as a concept, as a lived reality. If the first thing you reached for when the not enough feeling showed up was not the evidence the world offers for why it might be true, but this: our Father made me with reverence and intention. He called the work wonderful. And he does not make mistakes. That is a different starting point, completely different, and it changes everything that comes from it. Here is what makes the not enough feeling so persistent. It does not come from nowhere. It gets installed over time, through experiences, through the things people said, past, or did not say, at moments when their words carried weight, through comparison that started early and never fully stopped, through a culture that is extraordinarily skilled at showing you every version of a life that looks better than yours, every hour of every day, on a screen that fits in your pocket. That is a relentless message, and it takes a relentless counter-truth to stand against it. Psalm 139 is that counter-truth, not because it asks you to ignore the voices, but because it gives you something more authoritative than them to stand on. The same Father who made everything that exists and everything that ever will exist looked at the work of forming you and called it wonderful. That verdict was not issued by someone who did not know what they were looking at. It was issued by the one who sees everything, who knows everything, who has perfect judgment about the value of what he creates, and he called it wonderful. David goes on to say, "My soul knows it very well." That phrase is worth sitting with. This was not a truth David had to convince himself of intellectually. It was something settled in him at a level deeper than thought. His soul knew it, not because life had always confirmed it, not because every experience had reinforced it, but because he had spent enough time in the presence of our Father, enough time with his own heart turned toward the one who made him, that the truth had settled into him at a level the voices could not easily reach. That kind of knowing is available to you. It does not arrive automatically. It grows through time spent with our Father, through returning to what he says about you again and again, until it starts to go deeper than your head and actually reach the place in you where the not enough feeling lives. Because that feeling does not live in your intellect. It lives deeper than that. It lives in the place where you form your sense of who you are and whether you belong and whether you matter. And that is exactly the place our Father is reaching into with Psalm 139. Not your understanding, your soul. There are things about you that you have spent years wishing were different. The way you are wired, the way your mind works, the particular shape of the life you have ended up living versus the one you imagined. And in the middle of all of that, our Father is saying the same thing he said to David, "I made you. I made you this way." With attention and intention and reverence for what I was creating, I have known you fully since before you drew your first breath. And I have never once looked at the work and thought, I should have done that differently. That is who you are to our Father, not the edited version, not the version that has it together, the whole version, fully known, fully seen, and called wonderful. The not enough feeling is going to come back. It is persistent, but now you have something to meet it with, not a pep talk, not a list of your accomplishments. The word of the Father who made you, who has known you completely since before you were born, who looked at the work of creating you and called it wonderful. You are not an accident. You are not a rough draft. You are not a version of someone else that did not quite measure up. You are a deliberate, specific, irreplaceable work of a Father who does not make mistakes, fearfully and wonderfully made. Your soul can know it very well. Pause here. What did our Father say to you today?